There are moments in history that echoes for centuries. Moments when fate is decided not by the will of the people, but by the greed of empires. One such moment came in the winter of 1884 in a cold European city far from the sun-kissed soil of Africa. It was here in Berlin that Africa, rich, vast and sovereign, was carved up like a feast on the table, without a single African present. This is the story of how Africa was sold. By the late 19th century, Africa was a tapestry of kingdoms, empires and tribes, each with its own culture, language and legacy. But European powers had grown restless. Industrializations demanded resources, gold, rubber, diamonds, oil, and the competition for global dominance ignited what would come to be known as the Scramble for Africa. Missionaries paved the way, explorers mapped the rivers, traders exploited local communities, and then came the soldiers. To avoid war among themselves, European powers turned to diplomacy. In November 1884, Otto von Bismarck, the Iron Chancellor of Germany, invited 14 European nations and the United States to a conference in Berlin. Their mission: to regulate colonial ambitions. Their method: partition a continent. Behind closed doors, in halls lined with gold and marble, the fate of over 1,000 African nations was sealed without their knowledge or consent. Not a single African voice echoed in those chambers. There were no kings of Benin, no queens of Dahomey, no elders from Mali or Nubia. Just bureaucrats and monarchs dividing the motherland like spoils of war. The General Act of the Berlin Conference was signed in February 1885. It formalized the rules for colonization. Coastal claims had to be backed by military presence. Rivers like the Congo and Niger were declared open for European trade. And with pen and ink, borders were drawn, borders that ignored ethnic lines, languages, and histories. Overnight, ancient civilizations became territories. Tribes were split between foreign flags, enemies were forced to coexist, allies were torn apart. The impact was immediate and devastating. In the Congo, King Leopold II of Belgium established a personal empire marked as a humanitarian mission. What followed was one of the greatest atrocities in human history. An estimated 10 million Congolese died under a regime of forced labor, mutilation, and terror, all to extract rubber and ivory. In present-day Namibia, the Herero and Nama peoples were driven into the desert by German colonial forces, starved, hunted, and killed in what many now recognize as the first genocide of the 20th century. In East Africa, the British imposed taxes and seized land, leading to uprisings like the Maji-Maji Rebellion in Tanganyika, brave but brutally crushed. In West Africa, mighty kingdoms like the Ashanti and Benin were sacked, sacred artifacts were looted, thrones were desecrated, and the entire city were burned to the ground. Families were broken, cultures were erased, languages silenced, and a continent bled. But the colonizers didn't just take land, they took minds. They introduced systems designed to devalue African identity. African spirituality was replaced with European religion. Local customs were ridiculed as barbaric. History was rewritten to present Africa as a land of darkness waiting to be enlightened. Generations grew up believing that their past was shameful, their future only valid if approved by Europe. The psychological chains of colonization, of inferiority, division, and dependency would last far longer than any physical rule. But Africa did not surrender quietly. From the forest of Ghana to the highlands of Ethiopia, warriors and matriarchs rose to defend their homes. Yaa Asantewaa led the Ashanti rebellion against the British rule. Samori Toure resisted the French for years. Ethiopia under Menelik II famously defeated Italy at the Battle of Adwa, becoming a beacon of African sovereignty. As decades passed, resistance turned into revolution. By the mid-20th century, the winds of independence began to blow, but the wounds of Berlin remained. Artificial borders fueled civil wars, ethnic tensions flared, and economies still bore the fingerprint of colonial exploitation. The Berlin Conference was not just a meeting, it was a betrayal, a theft, a tragedy of arrogance. But Africa endures. Despite the chains, despite the scars, the spirit of the continent has never been extinguished. Its drum still beats, its stories still echo, its people still rise. Today we remember not just the pain, but the power, not just the loss, but the legacy. We tell the truth because the future deserves to know the cost of silence. The day Africa was sold must never be forgotten. If you are moved or enlightened by this story, please like and subscribe to this channel. Thank you.